A woman makes the world end. What does she see? What does she hear? How did it come to this? How did the world of the Ring cycle, which took a quarter of a century to create by its composer, dramatist and poet, all the same person, Richard Wagner, and that took 4 music dramas for us to experience? Why does it end with this musical apocalypse in The Twilight of the Gods, Götterdämmerung, the final music drama of The Ring? Wagner said that the entire story of the Ring cycle exists to show how a woman becomes wise through love's profoundest suffering. Brünnhilde, the Valkyrie who gave up her immortality in her love for the hero Siegfried, throws herself on Siegfried's funeral pyre and brings about the destruction of Valhalla, the realm of her father, the self-annihilating god Wotan, and the Ring, the symbol of the accursed power that corrupts everyone who touches it throughout all 4 music dramas. The Ring returns to the water with the Rhine maidens. So the world of The Ring ends in this conflagration of the musical ideas that you've been listening to for the last 16 hours or so, if you're doing it all in one go in classical music's ultimate binge-listening box set marathon. It's music that burns with radiance and that leaves you in a state of catastrophically intoxicated catharsis. But what's it all about? What does The Ring mean? And can you sum up the Ring cycle's significance, the ongoing seismology of its musical, political and cultural impacts in less than half an hour? I'm going to try on today's The Listening Service, and without giving the game away, I will fail, and fail hard. Because the Ring cycle is so vast in its scope and so controversial in the sounds that it makes and the world views that it builds up and demolishes, that even the attempt is patently ridiculous. Yet, for all of the ideas about the Ring, its tangled web of philosophy, musical revolution, social change and mythic experience, there's one strain of thought that it means precisely nothing at all. That the Ring cycle is an essay in nihilism, a mishmash of Nordic myth fused with the cosmology of Wagner's own ego. A confused mess of proto-socialist and proto-fascist ideas, so that its drama is a gigantic exercise in futility. Or, as the musical satirist Anna Russell summed it up at the piano in New York in 1953...
And who do you think turns up next? The Rhine maidens. So, they take their lump of gold, I mean the ring, which is of course their lump of gold, and they put it back where it came from, and after sitting through this whole operation, what do you hear? You hear... You're exactly where you started 20 hours ago. Mind you, it's possible to be even pithier than Anna Russell. In
2006, here on BBC Radio 3, one of our listeners, Robert Boot, came up with the finest 10-word distillation of the Ring cycle that I know. In fact, it's the only 10-word distillation of the Ring cycle that I know, and here's what Robert wrote. Gods homeward headed, close relations wedded, auntie bedded, hero deaded. That's one line for each of the operas. Das Rheingold, the first, Gods homeward headed, to the Valhalla, that is, that Wotan will rob the dwarf Alberich for, all to get out of exchanging Freya and her golden apples for the giants having built Wotan's castle in the sky. Close relations wedded, that's the twins Siegmund and Sieglinde, Wotan's children, whose love defines the trauma of Die Walküre, the second opera. Auntie bedded, well, after slaying Fafnir to claim the ring, Siegfried breaches the circle of fire to claim Brunhilde in the opera that bears his name. And Brunhilde is Siegfried's aunt, since Wotan is her father and Siegfried's grandfather. Hero deaded, that's Götterdämmerung, the final opera of The Ring, as Siegfried is murdered by Hagen after betraying Brunhilde, having drunk a magic potion that means he forgets about his love for her until just before his death. Which is one way of summing up the Ring cycle, but not saying anything about it. Fail again, fail better. Now, let's try another tangent. You know, all those gods, all those monsters, it's no surprise that as well as endless philosophical exposition in earnest essays about Wagner's relationship with Schopenhauer, Feuerbach, Nietzsche or Marx, the Ring cycle's ambition and the planet-sized ego of its creator, Wagner bankrupted an entire state, Bavaria, to build his own opera house in Bayreuth, a shrine for the exclusive performance of his music dramas. It's all been ripe for the parodies of pop culture bathos, as Bugs Bunny and Elmer Fudd know well. What's opera, Doc?
Wabbit twat. Kill the rabbit, kill the rabbit, kill the rabbit. Kill the rabbit? Yo-ho-ho, 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 yo-ho. Almighty warrior of great fighting stock, might I inquire to ask if, what's up, Doc?
Kill the Wabbit, set to The Ride of the Valkyries from Die Walküre in 1957. The murderous zealotry of Elmer Fudd finding its perfect musical realization in Wagner's music, as if the Valkyries were flying through the air on their horses to take the corpse of Bugs Bunny to Rabbit Valhalla. Mixed with Bugs's responses there, which are actually taken from Siegfried's music in the next opera of The Ring. Well, What's Opera, Doc shows how familiar a meme the image of Brunhilde, the horn-helmeted soprano, was in the mid-20th century. Even if you hadn't seen the whole Ring cycle, then, as now a minority of listeners, you knew the image of the stentorian soprano belting out her top notes on the mountaintop.
Return, won't you return my love? For my love is yours.
The Ride of the Valkyries, from the third act of Die Walküre, is the single most recognisable piece of music from the entire Ring cycle. And yet, The Ride of the Valkyries is some of the Ring's most unusual music. Joachim Köhler, Wagner's biographer, Called the ride, with its 8 screaming Valkyries, the apotheosis of the cold brilliance of the world of power, in reality a world of death. The Valkyries are harvesters of the corpses of dead heroes, after all, whose boisterous savagery is vented in screams of delight on the part of the horsewomen, but is tamed by a powerful rhythm that tramples everything underfoot. Pleasure in the wild hunt of the ride of the Valkyries, Joachim Köhler says, is pleasure in our own destruction. Elmer Fudd had a point to use it to kill the wabbit. And so did the director Francis Ford Coppola when he used this music to accompany the US helicopters raining death on the Viet Cong village in his 1970 film Apocalypse Now. Robert Duvall's commanding soldier presses play on a tape of the ride of the Valkyries in his helicopter at the start of the Americans' death hunt. So it's not just that we are hearing the music as watchers of the film, the soldiers are hearing the ride of the Valkyries too. And where the ride is a musical metaphor for an orgy of death in Wagner's opera, it's literally used to murder, destroy and rain fire and napalm on the Vietnamese in Apocalypse Now.
Hey, what a shot! Outstanding, red team, outstanding. Get your case of beer for that.
The director Ken Russell saturated his surreal, delirious film Listomania with The Ride of the Valkyries 2, where it accompanies the resurrected Wagner's murderous rampage. Wagner returns to the world as a zombie Hitler through a Jewish ghetto, using an electric guitar machine gun as a weapon of Nazi outrage. And this is a cinematic sequence whose luridness only amplifies the connection in many people's minds between Wagner's anti-Semitism, as published in his essay Jewishness in Music, and the rise of the Nazis. Wagner was an anti-Semite, driven by personal jealousy of Jewish composers who supported him, but whom he wanted to usurp, Mendelssohn and Meyerbeer especially. Jealousy he turned into poisonously simple-minded ideology in his writings. And his scapegoating of Jews and Jewishness as the antithesis of the Germanness that he wanted his music and his culture and his politics to represent in the Ring cycle and everywhere else, was one of the catalysts for Wagner's creativity. And I don't think you can, as many have tried to, separate the man from the music, since Wagner's ideas, his worldview, is infused into every note that he wrote, just as it's behind every word that he published, and which he did at excessive, exhausting and tortuous length. And this is one of the most complex cultural and political questions in the history of music, which has ramifications for how we appreciate all art that's made by artists whose worldviews and personal politics we may radically disagree with, or which we know are appallingly reprehensible. And yet again, on today's programme, I don't have an answer. But maybe the interweaving of music and drama in the Ring cycle can help us find a way to respond. Remember what Joachim Köhler said, that to enjoy the ride of the Valkyries is to pleasure in our own destruction. And that's because the ride is an incredibly unusual passage of music in the Ring. It's one-dimensional, because it's an image of terrifying and thrilling power. It's the most straightforwardly violent music in the Ring. But the rest of the Ring cycle, the other 15 and a half hours and more, isn't made of these sorts of certainties, musically or dramatically. Instead, the Ring's characters and its music are in an agonising state of internal and external conflict. Power is never something that's straightforward or absolute. It's never held up as an idea to which the world ought to aspire, or to which it should bow down. Take Wotan, the leader of the gods in the Ring, the Germanic version of Odin in Norse mythology. king of the gods. Pretty powerful, you'd have thought. But that's not really true at any point of the ring. Wotan is really a tragic figure whose selfishness, deception, hypocrisy and greed are the engines of his own destruction and of the entire world of the gods over which he so ineffectually presides. The ring's drama is made from Wotan's failings that are all too human. In Das Rheingold, he steals the gold from Alberich, who has renounced love in order to take it himself from the Rhine maidens. But Wotan compounds Alberich's original sin against nature with his own human crime of theft. Die Walküre, Wotan has to admit to his law-loving wife Fricka that he betrayed her with a mortal to father Siegmund and Sieglinde, progeny he produced only in order to try and win back the ring for himself. In the third opera, Siegfried, Wotan is a cynic. He's world-weary and self-pitying and awaiting his own destruction, willingly letting his spear be shattered by Siegfried's sword. And in Götterdämmerung, Wotan doesn't even appear on stage. There's nothing he can do apart from sit up there in Valhalla and wait to be consumed by fire along with all of the other supposed immortals, the victim of his own schemes, his ravens coming home to roost. But listen to this from the final scene of Die Walküre. It's a scene between father and daughter, Wotan and Brünnhilde. And it's so emotional because they're singing words and music of mutual vulnerability, a vulnerability forged in love. Brünnhilde disobeys Wotan because she's moved by the plight of Siegmund and Sieglinde. She tries to save them. She's doing what Wotan's heart wants, but what his laws and contracts forbid him to. And at the end of Die Walküre, Brünnhilde gives up her immortality for human love. and Wotan confines her to the fiery mountaintop in this music that only a hero can conquer. It's some of the Ring's most devastating musical outpouring, this, as Wotan says farewell to Brunhilde. And the power of this music doesn't come from an epic victory of the forces of good over those of darkness. That simple dichotomy of good versus evil doesn't exist anywhere in the Ring cycle. Instead, this is a human power that the music is expressing, sacrifices made for love. So no black and white battle of good against evil, power that is never absolute. Instead, the mythic conflicts that the characters go through in the Ring are surrogates for the battles that we all go through as individuals, as societies, as cultures. The Ring cycle is never what Wagner's writings are. It is never ideological in its music or its drama. It doesn't offer an on-stage utopia. It offers no simple solution. In fact, if you tried to build a political belief system from the Ring cycle, you'd end up saying that all leaders are corrupt, that any attempt to control the forces of nature or destiny inevitably results in destruction, and that the people who you think are your heroes will only ever betray you. Now that's not a prospectus that any political leader could ever sign up to, if they truly understood what happens in the Ring. Which might suggest that I think I know what it's about. Well, better to say, I know what the Ring's definitely not about. The Ring cycle isn't a political slogan, and it's not a blueprint for ideology. So, what might it be? Well, let's rewind to the end of the world, the end of the twilight of the gods. What do we in the audience see and hear in the final minutes of the Ring? Wotan and the gods burning up there in Valhalla, the Rhine overflowing its banks. The Ring takes its last victim, Hagen, who tries one final time to get his hands on it, but is drowned by the Rhine maidens. Brunhilde is immolated with Siegfried's body. But the stage isn't empty. In fact, what's left after this delirious orgy of purification by fire and water is a crowd of men and women. Gods and dwarves and demigods and goddesses have been extinguished, but human beings remain. Wagner says in his stage directions that the men and women of the Rhine surge into the foreground as far as is possible. Extremely moved, they watch the growing glow of fire in the sky. In 1976, in the centenary production of the Ring cycle at Wagner's theatre in Bayreuth, the crowd of men and women and children in Patrice Chéreau's staging turn towards the audience at the very end of Götterdämmerung, as if they're asking the question to the audience, the world now belongs to us, human beings, so what are we going to do with it? The gods have failed. Will you do any better than Wotan and Alberich, than Brünnhilde and Siegfried? Well, Wagner wants the answer to this question to be yes. That's implicit in the music, because the tune that you remember the most from these final minutes of the entire Ring cycle is this one. It's music that emerges from the mythic consciousness of the score of the Ring. It's an idea we've heard only once before, when Brünnhilde implores Sieglinde to save herself. She's carrying Siegfried in her womb in the third act of Die Walküre. And this is a breathtaking, vertiginously moving melody that's associated with redemption through love. So, who is redeemed at the end of the Ring cycle? Brünnhilde's immolation redeems Wotan's guilt and the crimes of Alberich and Hagen, as well as the betrayal of Siegfried. Yet, the true redemption at the end of the Ring isn't about those characters on stage. It's about us, all of us, listening. Wagner used the term Gesamtkunstwerk to describe his music dramas, total works of art, music, drama, poetry, staging, all together, which his new theatre at Bayreuth, with its invisible orchestra and its darkness in the auditorium, was designed to reveal as vividly as possible. But The Ring is a total work of art in another sense, because it's about what's going on, what's happening to us in the audience. Will we accept Wagner's challenge at the end of The Ring? That challenge is change. The 4 dramas of the Ring cycle are an object lesson in how not to make a world. All of the efforts of the gods and the monsters end in catastrophe. So what will we do? As the director Patrice Chéreau said, the gods have lived, the values of their world must be reconstructed and reinvented. Men and women are there as if on the edge of a cliff. They listen tensely to the oracle which rumbles from the depths of the earth. So, what does Wagner's Ring cycle mean? It can't be reduced to an answer, but it can be summed up in a question. After those 16 hours and more and 4 days and 4 operas, we aren't back where we began, we're much, much further back than that. After this excavation of ourselves, the revelation of the limits of power and the limitlessness of love, we're faced with a primordial decision: how to make a new world. On the cliff edge at the end of the Ring cycle, we all need to decide, what world shall we make now? It's over to us, over to you.